What are you doing? Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Hill Country, located in Kerrville, Texas. Good morning to all of you. Glad that you joined us. Do not see visitors, but if we have visitors that come visit our Facebook page or YouTube or wherever else this goes, we welcome you and are glad that you've chosen to join us. I think you'll find this morning interesting. Does anyone have announcements that we need to hear besides vote, vote, vote? Raise your hand and Justin will recognize you. Okay, moving along. Let's light the chalice. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. So do many other UU churches right now. Our flame joins their flames, and together we strive to bring light to the cause of human justice in this world. First thing we'll do is have a hymn. This hymn is called Guide My Feet, and it's sung by the Oasis Chorale, which is an a cappella touring and recording choir made up of Anabaptists and Mennonites, or people with Anabaptist Mennonite backgrounds. The choir has members from 10 different states and 1 Canadian province. If you recognize the song and you know the words, feel free to sing along. Okay, Justin.
And then I'll be working the polls too, so we're looking forward to that. And all right, anybody else?
All right, thanks to all of you for sharing that. We will hold all of what you've said in our hearts and say amen to what David had to say. I think we all feel that way. All right, Justin's now going to put on the screen our church's mission statement, which we will read together, and then our affirmation, which we will read together. So as soon as our dog quits. Okay. We journey together, guided by UU values, to seek, nurture, and serve our loving church family, our community, and our world. The doctrine of this church is love. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. And this is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, as we strive to have all souls grow into harmony with the divine. All right, just a brief reminder, this is our offertory. Expenses are ongoing. I looked at the latest financials that Judy sent out, and we're doing pretty well, actually, primarily because we do not have the minister expenses, but the need still exists. We had the extraordinary expenses related to our plumbing, and so your contributions, continuing contributions, would be appreciated very much. Okay, this is not in our order of service, if any of you downloaded it, but I want to do a reading that I found that I like, and it's sort of appropriate, I think, to what Janet's going to do for us. This is called Monet Refuses the Operation by Liesel Mueller. Doctor, you say there are no halos around the streetlights in Paris, and what I see is an aberration caused by old age and affliction. I tell you, it has taken me all my life to arrive at the vision of gas lamps as angels, to soften and blur and finally banish the edges you regret I don't see, to learn that the line I call the horizon does not exist, and sky and water so long apart are the same state of being. And now you want to restore my youthful errors, fixed notions of top and bottom, the illusion of three-dimensional space, wisteria separate from the bridge it covers. Well, I tell to you, I will not return to a universe of objects that don't know each other, as if islands were not the lost children of one great continent. The world is flux, and light becomes what it touches. It becomes water, lilies on water, above and below water, becomes lilac and mauve and yellow and white and cerulean lamps. Doctor, if only you could see how heaven pulls earth into its arms and how infinitely the heart expands to claim this world, blue vapor without end. All right, we'll next have another hymn. To Be Human. This is sung by Jelani Alladin. I don't know whether I'm saying that right, Alladin. She is a member of Forward Together, the public theater. Justin? Thank you. And now we will hear from Janet.
Today's sermon is excerpted from Quest for Meaning articles by Reverend Jordan Nelson Long and Reverend Forrest Gilmore. First, from Reverend Long. This was written in January regarding her New Year's resolution. So far, I suck at this vegetarian thing. The problem is pretty simple. I keep finding myself with a chorizo burrito in my hand. I've eaten far less meat and probably more vegetables than usual, but I am definitely failing any purity test out there. And not intentionally, it's just that 40 years of habit is hard to break. And my specific commitment to the not eating of meat is, at the moment, a shallow one. So the deal is off, right? Not at all. Do I at least feel like a failure? No. And I also don't feel like a vegetarian exactly. What I feel like is a work in progress, and I trust that. I trust my ability to learn and grow. I trust myself to lean toward my commitments and to do it better day by day. I have a shallow commitment to not eating meat, at least at the moment. But I have a very deep commitment to trying to live in fuller concert with my values and with the earth. There's a lot holding me here in this experiment, none of which dies of imperfection. I'm not telling you this as confessional. I don't need a witness or arbiter for my eating practices. I'm here for the metaphor. Sometimes we suck at things at first, even when we care about the larger implications. And you know what? Sometimes your friend or neighbor or colleague does too. And a thing that American culture and UU theology are both averse to grasping is that we as people can commit to a thing and suck at doing what we committed to and still keep going in the service of our commitment. We are averse to grasping that it's possible, and it is frankly alien to us to consider that this kind of try and try better is what integrity looks like. Without that, what we have when we mess up is cut off. That's effective in the most surface level sense at removing discomfort, but its ask, or our ask of it, is that we be left where it found us. It's the opposite, in short, of change through growth. We are going to need strategies for when it's hard, for when people are, well, human, for when we ourselves are in progress more than we wish, trying and failing and trying again. I might someday be an actual vegetarian. What I am right now is someone willing to learn out loud, a person with tools better than shame. I am not yet good at this year's resolution, but I'm not worried. I know through long experience that my grit is made out of my practices. And guess what? Yours is too. And another perspective from Reverend Gilmore. The fundamental belief in the value of the individual is expressed in our first principle, an affirmation of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Yet sometimes I wonder if we misunderstand the fullness of our first principle. In a very success-driven society, I think we sometimes see it as affirming not so much our unconditional worthiness as a complete goodness in ourselves, allowing us to ignore the less savory aspects of our character. Affirming our fundamental goodness has its value, but such an emphasis can also lead us to miss the most essential implication of our inherent worth, that we need not be good to be loved. To know this truth is to be healed. It is to embrace wholeness over perfection, to honor ourselves not as we might be, but rather as we are. I think interpreting our inherent worth as our inherent goodness can lead us to be very fearful about owning up to our own mistakes, failures, and even at times cruelty. Even in our most horrible of mistakes, we are worthy of love. As a young man of 24, just entering seminary, I suffered deeply from an inability to embrace my failings. I resisted acknowledging all the wounds and weaknesses in myself, feeling the incredible need to be good, to be right, to be perfect in order to be loved. I went through a ministerial career assessment, a required part of the process of becoming a minister, and was very nervous. I was afraid to give the wrong answers on the psychological tests. The therapist asked me what my flaws were, and I didn't have the self-awareness to answer. It was a painful 3 days that ended with the group facilitator telling me the therapist had placed a nickel bet with him that I wouldn't be able to handle ministry. As hard as it was, the experience for me began a very painful, yet ultimately liberating path of growing acceptance of myself, not as I want to be, but as I am, even when I fail, even when I am not liked. Life seems to test these insights, and subsequently, I found myself challenged more deeply than ever before. While serving my last church in Princeton, New Jersey, I fell in love and married a woman in Bloomington, Indiana. She had 2 children, and the 3 of them moved out to Princeton to live with me. Over the course of our time, I found myself consistently torn between the needs of my congregation and the needs of my family. My wife desperately wanted to return to Bloomington, but I felt a deep calling to continue to serve the Princeton congregation. My marriage suffered, my work suffered. I struggled mightily and fiercely and arrogantly to hold on to both, yet never had enough of me to do either well. After 3 years of struggling, at last I gave in, and we moved to Bloomington to raise our family near my wife's parents. I learned so much about being incomplete from that experience. I was not enough. From the beginning, I pressed on, hurting both my family and the church. I so badly wanted to have both, and refused to see the inevitable, that the situation was unworkable. I also had to give up something very precious to me, something that made me feel like I was a good person. Not only my work as a minister, but also my dream of one day being an important minister. These were humbling awakenings. Letting go of my parish was perhaps the most painful experience of my life. But I surrendered to a humbler life, and I found a much deeper love inside, both for myself and for others. In full disclosure, after 4 years in Bloomington, my wife and I sadly decided to divorce. Self-acceptance remains an essential aspect of this transition for me. I never thought I'd be someone whose marriage would end in divorce. Yet here I am, incomplete, imperfect, and loved. While in seminary, I had a professor who was also a Catholic nun. She told me something fascinating. She believed the resurrection came too soon, that people did not have enough time to sit in the loss, to be present to the failure. I think that's a powerful insight. When approaching the pain that comes with failure, we tend to find ways to pass over the experience quickly, to not allow ourselves to be present and actually feel what we're feeling. We get busy, we criticize ourselves, we criticize others, we dive into one self-improvement project or another. We try to see the positive side. When we fail, any response we make that does not invite in our simple experience of failure removes us from the wholeness of who we are. In so doing, we reject that part of ourselves that does not know success, alienating ourselves from a very real part of our humanity, damaging ourselves by withholding the love that we all deserve. I think it is not in our immediate interest to take our failures and turn them into something positive, the lemons to lemonade approach. To attempt too soon to turn our failures into something good can be another way of avoiding the pain of failure, thus avoiding the healing that comes when we compassionately offer our presence to our hurt. When we fail, we need to allow ourselves the time to simply feel the pain, experience the hurt. In so doing, we allow ourselves to remain open and true to ourselves. For this is ultimately what love is all about. When we feel our failures, when we allow ourselves to be present to them without trying to change them or alter them, we know compassion, we know love. And this, I believe, is the true meaning, the greatest gift of our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. You need not be good to be loved. May we surrender the need to be perfect, set aside the pretense of success, and enter into the humility of our full selves. We succeed and we fail. In the midst of both, let us show love.
Very nice. Thank you, Janet. That kind of hits home to all of us, I think. All right, let's have some talk back and share our thoughts and feelings about what Janet just told us, or her respective ministers. Raise your hand and Justin will recognize you. Hello. Okay.
I'll add a comment if, even though I'm the one who read it. The reason this spoke to me is that while I do think it's good to find the silver lining in the cloud, and it's good to turn lemonade into lemons if you can, sometimes you don't have enough of the good stuff. Sometimes there's not enough there that you can turn into lemonade. Sometimes there's just nothing there but the crap. And it's hard to sit with that. It's hard to accept it. And it's so easy, so tempting to run away from it. And I know this, I've experienced this. So it really spoke to me about the importance of accepting that. And I think even in a broader sense, not just our pain of failure, but pain from life, pain in general. It's better to see it and accept it and not run away from it. It's especially hard when it's caused by something I did myself. You know, it's especially hard when it is failure, something I screwed up. But it's a meaningful lesson for me.
Let's start with Pat. Well, actually, okay. Kevin started waving right as Janet started talking, so let me get Kevin and Julie in there, and then we'll go to Pat and then Linda.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That was a good selection. I really liked that, and realized to my surprise while I was listening that I think most of the time when I consider the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, I don't really include myself as much, especially now when I'm trying to see that in people that I detest. politically. I don't really detest many people, but there are some that it's hard to see that, and I've but I guess I'm too hard on myself. One other quick thing, the reading about Monet not wanting his vision fixed. I have made an appointment in the last week to get my cataract removed in January, and the doctor was asking me if I was seeing stars or halos around the lights when I was driving. I said, yeah, and I'm going to miss that because they really are pretty. I had not been aware of them until my other doctor had said, your cataracts are ready to go now. You need to think about, you need to see the surgeon. And I noticed that night I was driving at night, and I thought, well, I'm going to miss this because it really is a pretty thing. The colors and the shapes, and of course I can't see the street signs like I should. So I think there's
It's Christmas all the time, isn't it?
I really liked that reading. That was wonderful. Thanks.
And I could also mention that talking about mistakes, yesterday I drove to Costco and stood in line half an hour and waiting for optical there with my prescription in hand, only to get there, and the optician looked at my prescription and said, is this you? And because it had a woman's name as the patient's name on the prescription, and the birth date was wrong, and they gave me somebody else's prescription.
Oh,
no. So I got to go back and do it again. And so much for finally admitting that I need to get my distance vision corrected.
Sorry, Kevin, I cut you off there for right. I thought you were done. Let me get Pat up here, and then
Okay.
there you go.
Okay, well, first of all, Janet, you read that absolutely beautifully and with feeling. And it was very obvious that it meant a lot to you, your selection. You were able to read it as a person who internalized it. And that was beautiful reading. You are a good reader anyway, but that was so well done. And I think it was hard. I don't know how many of us, I know of only one person who claims to think he's perfect, and that is my husband. And I think that's his biggest imperfection, is that he thinks he's so perfect all the time. And that's what I tell him. But I don't like perfect people because I can't relate to them. And you can't live to be older and not have gone through traumas and mistakes, and perhaps, at least in my case, a lot of struggles with self-acceptance. And I don't know, I just think it hit home to so many of us that maybe it was hard to speak to it. I mean, now we're coming out and speaking to it, but that is my perception of the whole thing. And thank you for reading that. I don't know who chose it. If you chose it yourself, that's great. Thank you.
All right, let me go. Linda had her hand up, and then we'll make our way around here.
I want to thank Janet for reading the sermon today, and thank all of you talented people who agree to present a sermon for us. It really helps. It helps to hear it from our community. It helps our budget. It helps everything. And as to the service, I still struggle with the bad Linda. And have these fights with myself. And sometimes arguments with myself. So I understand, I have considered the inherent worth and dignity of myself. And we've had a couple of sermons on this topic. One of them was from your friend,
Elena?
Elena, which have really, really grabbed onto it because it is something I think we all struggle with in today's times, finding that inherent worth and dignity in a lot of people.
All right, Jill, and then we'll go Susan and Carolyn.
I love the Monet story, and I believe it is true, isn't it, Mike? I know that was a sort of poetic version of it, but if you look at the work late in his life, it becomes more and more abstract, more and more blurry. But what the talk reminded me of, several current present day philosophers, you might call them, like Brene Brown, and there's another one, I think his name is Daniel Kahn, something like that, talk about falling in love with what is. And when I am in a ditch, metaphorically sometimes, or in the weeds, whatever you want to call it, I try to keep that in mind. Fall in love with what is. It's another way of being in the present, but without struggling against it. And I found that to be helpful when I can put it into practice, which is not easy.
All right, Susan, you're up next.
Yes, it made this selection and your reading of it, which was so beautiful, made me think of, and for many people, a marriage that did not go well for me. And it was my second marriage. And it's so easy when I describe it to someone else to say it was his fault because he was an alcoholic and a drug addict. When you say those words, well, okay, he's at fault. But as I developed and I did seek counseling and help through that period of time in my life, and to this day, I talk to people, I realized my part, what I did, how I was not, it's not so much that I wasn't perfect, it's that I added to the turmoil. And then I did things that I had to forgive myself for doing, that I had hatred in my heart and anger and wanted to change someone into what he didn't want to change into being. So we grow so much through our failures, which I believe is what this is about. And I thank him. And sometimes I say that, now I'm saying it to you as a group. I thank my second husband for being in my life because I learned so much about myself.
All right, Carolyn, you're up.
I think an important thing about all this is to not get stuck in your failures and keep, reliving them and beating yourself up for them over and over and over again, which is what I have a tendency to do. And one of my neighbors just finally said something to me that probably everybody's heard this phrase. I never had. She said, "You have just got to stop shoulding all over yourself," which was so great. And I tried, but so much of it's shoulda, coulda, woulda, and feeling that I should, to be worthy, I should do this. So stop shoulding on yourself.
Not really.
Go ahead, Brian.
Amen.
I just wanted to contribute, as Janet was preparing for this morning during the week, the topic reminded me of one of the responsive readings in our hymnal on the subject of atonement, where the congregational response is, "We forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love." And over the years, since we became introduced with that liturgy, found that to be a nice mantra to draw on, especially dealing in these times.
Anybody else?
Well, thank you to all of you. Those comments were helpful to me and enlightening as well, again, as what Janet had to read to us. And I will echo the statement that she did that very well. All right, it is time to extinguish our chalice. I would remind you that once we complete our service, stay online and continue chatting with each other and make this a get together. So now we extinguish our chalice, but not the light that it brings, because that light now shines in each of us. As far as a benediction is concerned, what shall I say? But let me say this. In your life, may you know the holy meaning, the mystery that breaks into it at unexpected times. May you live in peace with your world and at peace with yourself. And may the love of truth guide you every day. Amen. Thank you for coming to our service.